Renegades of Puck to the trenches. It's time for Renegades of Puck TV. Welcome to the bunker. Welcome to the essence of No Half Steppin'. I'm your host and captain, Crazy Charlie Saunier, and before we get started on the No Half Steppin' hockey coverage, let me direct you to our home website, renegadesofpuck.com. Once you go to renegadesofpuck.com, you'll gain access points to all of the different points of information you need to know about the ROP, and once you click on that merchandise link, it will take you immediately to where you can find the classic logo t-shirt that you see me wearing right here in the bunker. We also have our Pride logo t-shirts and all of our special event t-shirts from our parties from over the years. You can also find all of those classic gimmicks that we're famous for: socks, throw pillows, wall art, bed sets. Makes no difference to the Renegades of Puck. We put our logo on it because, well, you could say we've sold out so that you can buy in. You can sure help us out on social media, and we sure would appreciate if you would jump in the trenches with the Renegades of Puck. We have so many different ways that you can consume the essence of No Half Steppin'. Let's start with YouTube. You can give us a subscription there, and that's where you'll find Renegades of Puck TV. If you prefer the audio podcast, you can find that across the universe, wherever podcasts can be found, whether that is on Apple or Google or Spotify or Stitcher. It doesn't matter. The Renegades of Puck can be found there. Just search Renegades of Puck. Then, social media is the next critical component to this operation. You can help us out by giving us a like, giving us a share, giving us a follow, and passing the links all around. Facebook, Twitter, it doesn't make a difference. Instagram, we are on each and every one of these platforms. Hell, we're even on TikTok now. You can also catch our behind-the-scenes live stream on Twitch. Building a nice community there and having a good bit of fun behind the scenes, showing you exactly how everything happens and works in the bunker. So, appreciate each and every one of you for helping us and consuming the essence of No Half Steppin' in whatever form it is that you can. You can become a partner of the Renegades of Puck by going to Venmo and searching Renegades of Puck, or you can just scan the QR code that's currently on your screen. Every single donation and dollar goes to helping us upgrade things here in the bunker. You may notice in the shot some brand new equipment. Thank you so much for your generosity and your donations. That helped us not only have an engineer in, but helped us troubleshoot and fix a major audio problem that we were unable to isolate and fix on our own. Thank you. You were able to help us out with that, and I sure would appreciate if you could continue helping us out as partners as we go forward. Again, that's on Venmo, Renegades of Puck. Now, it's obvious. You're here for the No Half Steppin' hockey coverage, and it is time for me, in fact, to deliver the goods. It's operation number 654 for the Renegades of Puck. That is right. Show number 654. 11 plus years of coverage now of the Nashville Predators and hockey at large. Let's get into it. This episode will be a season recap of the Nashville Predators as we head into the second round of the NHL playoffs. Update on that as well. And it will also be a preview of the next round of the AHL playoffs for the Milwaukee Admirals versus the Chicago Wolves. Anticipate Renegades of Puck in the trenches like Sean C. Smith, Rachel K., and Kyle Perkins throughout the episode. So, let's get to that hockey coverage, and let's go back and talk about the Nashville Predators season that was. The Nashville Predators finished this season after 82 games played with a record of 45, 30, and 7. 97 points was good enough to finish in 5th place. They had a home record of 25, 14, and 2, a road record of 20, 16, and 5, and a goal differential that was in the plus category of plus 14. Just to show you where the Preds finished in reference to the rest of the division, the Colorado Avalanche were the division winner with 119 points. Minnesota Wild finished in second place with 113 points. The St. Louis Blues with 109 in third place. The Dallas Stars finished in fourth place with 98 points. And there's the Preds at 97. The Winnipeg Jets below the Preds at 89. Chicago at 68. And Arizona at 57. 5 teams from the Central Division went to the NHL playoffs. That is the most teams from any division out of the 4 to qualify for the NHL playoff bracket. Now, for the Nashville Predators, when you look inside the numbers for the season, goals for scored a total of 266 on the season. That is good for 3.20 per game. That was 13th best in the NHL this season. Goals against, 3.05. So a very slim margin between goals for and goals against this season, which is why the Nashville Predators finished in 5th place in the Central Division. 17th overall, 252 goals against. That's 3.05 per game. Shots for a category track all season long. Not enough quality or quantity throughout the entirety of the season. 29.7. Had the Preds finish in the lower third of the entirety of the league at 24th. And in shots against, the Preds gave up 32.3 shots per game. That was 20th worst in the NHL. Now, special teams. The Nashville Predators power play has been abysmal for several years now. So it is quite impressive for me to get the opportunity opportunity to tell you that the Nashville Predators did finish the season with the sixth best power play in the entire NHL, converting at 24.4%, 63 out of 258 opportunities. The penalty kill was good for a time, but did drop to the lower middle of the league, 18th overall. 59 power play goals against is a very high number, but the Nashville Predators were shorthanded so many times this season. 79.2% was the penalty kill. Now, when it came to the postseason, I mentioned 5 teams from the Central Division made it into the NHL playoffs. The Nashville Predators secured wild card 2, unfortunately, because of their efforts at the very end of the season. They dropped all the way to wild card number 2, and that had them in a matchup with the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, the Colorado Avalanche. The Colorado Avalanche swept the Nashville Predators by scores of 7-2, 2-1 in overtime, 7-3, and 5-3, outshooting the Preds 21-9 overall in the series. And it was the first time ever that the Nashville Predators have been swept in a best-of-7 playoff series. Now, when it comes to team leaders from the regular season, of course, we all know the historic season that we witnessed. Captain Roman Josi he skated in 80 games this season. He scored 23 goals and had 73 assists for 96 points. 73 assists, 96 points, both represent franchise records. Also chipped in with 11 power play goals and 26 power play assists on the season. Matt Duchene finished second on the team in scoring. He skated in 78 games this year, scored 43 goals, which is now a new franchise record. Also added 43 assists for 86 points, which also would have broken the previous high of Paul Kariya's 85 points. So again, 2 players broke the points record for the Nashville Predators this year. 2 players also broke the goals record for the Nashville Predators this year. Philip Forsberg skated in 69 games and scored 1 less goal than Matt Duchene at 42. Also added 42 assists for 84 points on the season. Out of those 42 goals, 10 of those goals came on the power play. Mikhail Granlund skated in 80 games this season, had 11 goals and 53 assists for 64 points on the season. 25 of those assists came on the power play, so almost half of his total assists came from the power play. Ryan Johansson also had his biggest year as a Nashville Predator, scoring 26 goals and 37 assists for 63 points overall. 11 power play goals, 13 power play assists. A breakout season for Ryan Johansson. Tanner Jeannot also had a breakout season with 24 goals and for quite some time was considered to be in the Calder Trophy race, but unfortunately, due to a bit of a slump towards the end of the season, his name did not appear on any of those award sheets. 17 assists with his 24 goals adds up to 41 points on the season. Philip Tomasino in his rookie campaign, 11 goals and 21 assists for 32 points. And then you'll see Matthias Ekholm at 6 and 25 for 31. Alex Carrier, also a rookie this year, 3 goals, 27 assists for 30 points. Colton Sissons at 28 points. Fabro and Trennan at 24. Tolvanen at 23. But offensively, a disappointing season with only 11 goals. We'll talk more about that as the show goes along. Then you'll see Cousins, Cunnin, McCarron, Benning, Novak, Luff, Borowiecki, Myers, and so on as we go down the stats for the Nashville Predators. In net for the Nashville Predators this season, UC Saros emerged as a franchise goaltender and is a Vezina finalist at the end of this season. It is highly unlikely he will defeat Igor Shesterkin of the New York Rangers for the Vezina Trophy, but to be nominated as a finalist for one of the 3 best goaltenders in the entire NHL, that shows you just how quick UC Saros has come. 67 games played for UC Saros, 38, 25, and 3 at 2.64 goals against average and a 918 save percentage. Also, UC Saros suffering an injury at the end of the year, unable to compete in the playoffs. So the Nashville Predators definitely suffered without having one of the best goaltenders in the NHL. I do not think that would have been enough to help overcome the Colorado Avalanche, but as you saw in many of the other series in the first round of the NHL playoffs, many goaltenders were able to help their teams, and I think UC Saros would have at least helped the Nashville Predators be a bit more competitive. David Rittich in net this season, 17 games played, 6-3 and 4, 3.57 goals against average, and a .886 save percentage. I do believe that's probably the last time we will see David Rittich here in Nashville as a goaltender. As a backup goaltender, only getting 17 games on the season, it showed that John Hines just did not have the confidence, even in back-to-back scenarios, playing UC Saros twice in less than 24 hours. It just shows that there was a lack of confidence in the backup goaltender. Now, Connor Ingram came in the playoff for an injured UC Saros and for an ineffective David Rich, and also has performed very well. With 3 games played on the season, he was 1-2 at 3.71 goals against, averaging .879 save percentage, but he played in some incredibly difficult buildings and secured a victory in Minnesota, one of 3 Nashville Predators goaltenders to secure a victory against the Minnesota Wild this year. That is a trivia question. That is definitely something you can throw out there and win at some point in time. So that wraps up where the Nashville Predators were as far as statistics go, and that wraps up where they finished in the division and with all of the different numbers. So now it's time to talk about a little bit of analysis when it comes to the Nashville Predators, and going back and taking the autopsy. Sean C. Smith going to join me here momentarily to talk a lot more about this. But first, I'm going to share with you a couple of my thoughts. When it comes to the head coach, John Hynes, there has been a lot of talk. His contract is effectively up as of now. The team does have an option and can bring him back for next season, but it is up in the air whether that will happen. Yet to face the media, the head coach and the general manager have yet to announce what the future plans will be. My suspicion is that David Poile will still bring John Hynes back to coach next year, but again, everything is still in flux. Let me talk to you about the job John Hynes did looking back before we can look forward. John Hynes instilled an identity in this team over the last couple of years. Peter Laviolette had broken this team mentally, physically, and spiritually. John Hynes lifted them up from the bottom where they were and created an identity in this team. They were one of the toughest teams in the league for the entirety of the regular season. They led the league in fighting majors. Tanner Jeannot broke the record for hits in a season, and they were a lot of fun to watch out there. So that was the identity that John Hynes instilled in the team, and when the team played with that identity, I found them to be not only enjoyable to watch, but highly effective and very competitive, especially against some very good teams. I just wish they would have found a way to use that identity that they had built up over the course of the entire season to go up against the Colorado Avalanche in the first rounds. What else did John Hynes do that was well? Well, he coached multiple players to career years. We've been waiting for Ryan Johansson to break out for a couple of years, and he did that, but that's nothing like what we saw from Matt Duchene, who broke the franchise record for goals in the season. Philip Forsberg did the same thing this year. Roman Josi also had a career year. So John Hynes behind the bench has multiple players break franchise records and have career years in the same season. That has to be some credit to what he is doing, building the team up, gaining confidence, and working with the players behind the scenes. We've heard multiple players talk about their relationships and conversations with John Hynes in the post-Peter Laviolette era, and it seems that he is quite good at getting players to understand exactly what they need to do out there on the ice. Now, you can also flip this argument over, because we need to, and say that John Hynes' lack of playoff success this year definitely hurts his case to remain the Nashville Predators head coach, and frankly to remain a coach at the NHL level. Now, a failure with the Devils, failures with the Nashville Predators. How many more opportunities will he be given? Well, with the retreads in the coaching carousel, John Hynes will probably be a head coach in this league for many, many years to come, possibly with multiple stops in his future. But it's to be determined yet if he will be back with the Nashville Predators. Also, you have to bring it up. UC Saros and his workload and potential mismanagement. Was the injury at the end of the season directly related to the heavy workload that John Hynes deployed on his starting goaltender throughout the season, starting him in back-to-back games less than 24 hours apart? You know that I charged John Hynes with 1 count of coaching misconduct over that situation. It's certainly something that is worth discussing a lot further. UC Saros has just been a franchise goaltender now for 1 season, and he was ridden perhaps just a little bit too hard. The team will have to make some very serious decisions about who is going to coach this team moving forward, and perhaps get them to the next level where they can go back to winning playoff series. When it comes to the roster, there are some needs. Now, we all know that there is going to be changeover, but we have to see improvement on the defense core. It just was not good enough this season. Luzon, added at the trade deadline, is a nice piece going into next year that can helpfully help bolster the defensive core at this point. Alex Carrier emerged from his rookie season to be very impressive. Ekholm and Josi, of course, are going to be there, but you have got to do something better about defensemen's number 5 and 6, and right now, it seriously does not appear that there is a whole lot coming from Milwaukee immediately. Now, Davies in the future, Tennyson perhaps, Myers maybe. But for right now, the Nashville Predators need proven NHL defenseman. David Poile, if he is still the general manager this summer, needs to go out and take care of handling that business. Also, need to add some wingers to this team. It was obvious and deficient in the playoffs that the Nashville Predators were reduced to a one-line team, and they simply cannot be reduced to that. If Matt Duchene and Philip Forsberg were not skating with a particular center, that particular center wasn't generating very much offense. Tolvanen did not take that big leap forward that we all hoped. Tomasino is still probably another season away from being that type of every game winger. So the Nashville Predators need to go out and they need to add some size and some scoring punch when it comes to the wing, especially on the second line. And Philip Forsberg, what are you going to do about Philip Forsberg? Is he about to get that max contract? 42 goals on the season, highly impressive. He is now the franchise's all-time leader in goals scored, and he has played his entire NHL career as a Nashville Predator to this point. Indications are that both parties are still talking, but you never know exactly how that's going to work out. Rumors are that many other teams are highly interested in paying Philip Forsberg lots of money to come score 40-plus goals for their team, especially the LA Kings, reuniting him possibly with Victor Arvidsson at the end of his career. It would be interesting to see that. The LA Kings are certainly a team on the rise in the Western Conference. So for the Nashville Predators, is Philip Forsberg back? And if Philip Forsberg is not back next year, then the general manager of this team has questions to answer, because he had the opportunity to trade Philip Forsberg for a significant amount of assets instead of yet again watching another high-profile player walk at the end of a season and go to free agency and move on to another team. The upside for this Nashville Predators team is easily Tanner Jeannot. 24 goals this season. He was in conversation for Rookie of the Year for quite some time. He broke the franchise record for hits. He's got it all, and he can do it all. We started to see him get more upper line minutes as the season went along, and although he went into a slump at the end of the season, it was still a highly impressive season. Don't discount the rookie wall, and don't discount the fact with all that physical play and all the fights he had this season, may have gotten himself a little bit run down after about the 60th game of the season. That is not totally uncommon. I anticipate an off-season strength training regimen will get him ready for the long haul. The NHL is an incredibly long grind, 82 games over 6+ months, and then a playoff run after that. It is very difficult on the body. Until you've been through it once or twice, you have no idea how it will affect you. Tanner Jeannot might have been a victim of hitting the rookie wall just a little bit, but that's part of the upside. Phil Tomasino also, they did a good job of protecting his minutes early in the season. Exactly what I'm talking about with the rookie wall. They were able to avoid that with Tomasino by playing him on the fourth line most nights less than 10 minutes. If he could have converted on a couple of his breakaways earlier in the season, he would have had a much more impressive goal total, but still a very good rookie season for Phil Tomasino. He's got all the details to be a very good everyday NHL player. Carrier, I mentioned him very briefly. That was a rookie season. He was mostly picking up first pair defensive minutes next to Roman Josi, and I thought they represented themselves really well, and he played a really, really strong two-way game this entire season. Looking forward to his continued development as well. I think that he is absolutely a gem for this Nashville Predators team, and don't give up on Eeli Tolvanen just yet. I know offensively it was a bit of a depressed season, and you would hoped he would have taken that leap and been a 20-plus goal scorer after what we saw sniping on the power play the previous year, but I don't think it's time to give up on Eeli Tolvanen. He has proven to be a very reliable 200-foot player now who also plays very physical, is willing to go to the hard areas, and I think that the scoring touch is going to come back to him. Don't forget, he's been a goal scorer his entire life. He went through a bit of an outage towards the end of his run in Milwaukee, and he had an outage this last season with the Nashville Predators, but we know once he gets going, he can score goals in tons and bunches. So the Nashville Predators right now, well, they need him to just pick up the pace a little bit in that department. They don't need to move on from him. They just need to find a way to set him up for more scoring opportunities and hope that his shooting percentage goes up a little bit next year. But do not give up on Eeli Tolvanen yet. He is part of the future and the youth movement of this Nashville Predators team, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what else he can do. Sean C. Smith from OnTheForecheck.com. He is here in the trenches with me, talking all things Nashville Predators, going back and taking an autopsy look at the season that was. From OnTheForecheck.com, you can find him on Twitter at SCSOTF. He is, of course, the one and only Sean C. Smith.
Thanks, Charlie. Hey, Renegades, it's Sean C. Smith. Not a lot of frenetic energy for me tonight because, of course, at this point, the Predators' postseason has been over for a while, which also means the Predators' season is over. Now, I want to do a little bit of a recap. I'm not going to go into crazy detail because I feel like you've been with us every step of the way here on Renegades of Puck TV. So let's say this. The team started off, I remember going to the first media availability at the first skate, the beginning of the season. I talked to Colton Sissons, and the one thing he said that stuck out in my mind was he said he didn't know how good the team was going to be, but they sure as hell were going to be hard to play against. And that's really stuck out because it looked like early on that was the theme of the season, was that this was a team that was hard to play against. I went over it thousands and thousands of times, it seems like, on this and some other shows. But the reality was the Predators were going to be that team that had a little bit of the dog in them, if you know what I mean. They were going to be the team that you didn't want to go into the corners with, the team that made it hard for you to come down the ice, the team that made it hard for you to enter the zone cleanly, the team that clogged up the neutral zone and made you fight for every inch of ice that you gained. And at the beginning of the season, that's what it looked like. And I think we all kind of fell in love with that mentality and that identity. And despite, a little bit of slumpage, it seemed like realistically, the team was going to make it into the playoffs, and I think we all assumed, I know I did, that the Predators getting the Calgary Flames would have been the better draw. You see, of course, now that the Stars took that to a very long 7-game series with, of course, the Flames pulling through in the end, which has made us all feel like that the Predators probably would have been more competitive against the Flames. However, they did draw the Avalanche, and they got blasted. Like, I'm not even going to sugarcoat it or try to make it sound fancy. They got rolled hard. And the reality of that series was just that, number one, Colorado is a really good team. And I went on record before the playoff series started that I felt like the Florida Panthers were the odds-on favorite for me to win the Stanley Cup. But after getting a 4-game look at playoff mode Colorado Avalanche, look out rest of the NHL because the Avalanche are not playing around. And I feel very strongly that they're going to take it all. Now, we may come back in a few weeks and I'm wrong, but I don't care. We got a good look at what the Avalanche are capable of, and it's scary. I will just say that. It is a terrifying experience. Now, it's not just because the Avalanche were good that they won. I also want to say this, that identity that the Predators built, that they spent the entirety of the season focusing on, embracing, building, working toward, and just repeating over and over, almost ad nauseum, that they were going to be a team that was hard to play against. They did not look that hard to play against in the playoffs. They looked like a team that was going to pretty much let Colorado do whatever they wanted to do. No, I didn't expect the Predators to come out swinging and start fights like they typically had been doing in the regular season when it came to playoff time. But it looked like they didn't have, as we said before, the dog in them. And I think that's what happened, is the team just got to the playoffs, saw how the other series started with a lot of stuff being called. We've talked a lot this season about how we kind of think that the Predators' style of play was built for the playoffs because a lot of those aggressive penalties would go away because it was the playoffs. But we've actually seen there's been an increase in penalties called from the regular season to the postseason. And I think that they must have had a conversation, hey, look, they're calling these things, we can't do it. And it almost called their bluff on this. And they didn't want to go out and take penalties from being too aggressive, but that also led them to a lot of really ill-timed and unnecessary stick penalties that could have been avoided, probably because they were trying very hard not to play the type of game that they'd been playing all season. But that's a type of game that would have helped them at least put up a fight against Colorado. They didn't play it. They got bounced early. They got swept for the first time, and the season was over. So where do we go from here? Well, there's a few unanswered questions. Now, of course, learned today, when I recorded this on Tuesday, that John Hines and David Poile would be addressing the media on Thursday morning, which pretty much to me gives a clear indication that both of those gentlemen are, in fact, coming back for another season. Now, I didn't really think that was going to change. Now, you heard Charlie lay out a very calm and clear, message about why it's time for David Poile to move on. I've said for a long time that I don't think David Poile is going to move on until he's ready to move on. I think the biggest thing you would see happen, you would never get any kind of public admission that he'd been fired or pushed out or anything like that. I think the biggest thing you would see was that David Poile announces his retirement. I don't think that's what's going to happen on Thursday. I realistically would say that David Poile will come back, and I would say that John Hines will come back as well. There'll be some kind of extension, and he will continue coaching the Predators. For everybody that's up in arms about John Hines, I'd say you'd need to calm down. I think John Hines, if you don't trust me on this, I'm sorry, I think John Hines is a very good coach. I think he has a very good approach to managing the players. I've seen this Predators team more bought in to the team identity and to each other, playing for each other, than I've seen them have in a very long time. I'd be willing to say this team was even more willing to play for each other than the team that made it to the Stanley Cup final. And of course, you might say, well, if they were going to play for each other, why weren't they being physical? Again, I go back to the idea that those early penalties in those other series that started the day before kind of called their bluff and got them a little bit shied away from their regular game plan. That's what I think happened. So where do we go from here as far as you're saying, look, I'm worried about Hines, I'm worried about David Poile. I'm trying to tell you that John Hines is going to be just fine. You may be worried about David Poile, and that's really where the attention is going to be this offseason. We've left the season. Philip Forsberg never signed a new contract, never signed an extension. The only thing standing between him and free agency is a few weeks. And so it really remains to be seen whether or not David Poile is going to be able to get a deal done, or whether or not Philip Forsberg is going to test the waters of free agency. And I think that's the big question mark. Now, if Philip Forsberg walks, I think you're going to see a team that's going to have to do some rebuilding. I want to point out that this team, this Predators team, has had $10 million in cap space for the entirety of the whole past season. $10 million in cap space. Forsberg was already getting paid $6 million. Paying him $9 million shouldn't be too big of a stretch, but for some reason they weren't willing to do that. So the question is going to be that if Forsberg walks with the already existing $10 million in cap space plus the $6 million they would gain, they're going to have to fill some holes. How they decide to fill those holes, regardless of how it's branded by David Poile, is going to tell you what this team is going to be for the next few years. At the same time, if they're able to get Forsberg signed to a new deal, the way they fill the holes around him are going to tell you what kind of team this is going to be for the next few years. You would hope that Forsberg signing a deal and staying would lead to some more specific acquisitions that would really strengthen the core of the team, because there are going to be some spots opening up. But it's also worth pointing out that there are some guys on the team now that could be playing on a higher line, could be playing in different roles, and some guys in Milwaukee who could come up and play for the team as well and not cost a lot, leaving room to do something like sign Philip Forsberg or go out and get more talent around him. So those are the questions that I want answered in the offseason. That's all going to be up to David Poile, and how he deals with that is how I'm going to frame my outlook on this team for the next season. So right now, I don't really know where we go from here, but those are a few things you need to look out for. The biggest thing I can say is that the playoffs are still going on. There's a lot of really good hockey left to watch. And if you've been following along with the rest of the Renegades of Puck, the Milwaukee Admirals are making a run in the postseason, winning their first playoff series in quite some time. Now, I want to point out that this next series is going to be pretty good. The Chicago Wolves are no joke. And if you recall last season, because Milwaukee did not participate in the season, a lot of the Predators players deeper in the organization ended up playing with the Chicago Wolves. You're going to see a lot of guys playing that spent some time together, coaches that coach together, coaching now against each other. It has a lot of potential for a pretty intense game. And I'm going to tell you, the Chicago Wolves are a stacked and loaded team. They were pretty nasty last year. They're going to be pretty nasty this year. And so I think it'll be really interesting to see how those teams line up in the postseason. But I'm going to let the rest of the Renegades of Puck tell you all about that. And with that, Renegades, I'm going to throw it back over to Charlie. Buddy, take it away.
You can find him on Twitter at SCSOTF. You can check out his work at ontheforecheck.com. He's got the intel that you need to know, and I sure do appreciate Sean C. Smith jumping in the trenches right here on Renegades of Puck TV. Let me tell you about Rebirth Sports. You can find their work at rebirthsports.com. You can also find them on social media. They would be on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. They are not just jersey makers. They are hockey tailors, and they can outfit your entire operation and make you look as good as all of the operations I've been associated with. Whether it comes to the Renegades of Puck jerseys, home, away, or our third jersey, Rebirth Sports absolutely took my vision and made it a reality in every single way. And all I had to do was answer a couple of simple questions. And next thing I know, I had the prototype right there in my inbox ready to go. Now, many people are wearing those incredible threads. Whether it's been with the Mighty Drunks winning Stanley Kegs or on Lake Nokomis skating the U.S. Pond Hockey Championships, also with the Mighty Drunks, Rebirth Sports is always there, and every time I skate and wear their threads, somebody always stops me and asks me where I got them. It's Rebirth Sports. It's the easiest answer I've ever gotten to give. So check them out today. That's at Rebirth Sports. Now, let me give you an NHL playoff bracket update. The first round is concluded. Thanks to Mostradamus for jumping on last episode and recapping everything that's gone on with the first round of the NHL playoffs. As you know, Mosh and Sean C. Smith have remained behind on rear guard to cover NHL work, anything breaking with the Nashville Predators, while the rest of the Renegades of Puck have moved up north to help cover the AHL and the Milwaukee Admirals in their effort to gain a Calder Cup championship. So let me briefly tell you about the second round of the NHL playoffs, which are getting underway this evening. And you will see Colorado versus St. Louis in the Western Conference, and also Calgary versus Edmonton in the Eastern Conference. The Carolina Hurricanes will take on the New York Rangers. The Florida Panthers will take on the Tampa Bay Lightning. And just a couple of brief thoughts and comments on the series that we're going to get an opportunity to see. I'll start in the Eastern Conference and work my way back towards the West. And Carolina and New York Rangers, they finished very close to each other in the standings, and I think that series is going to be absolutely incredible. The New York Rangers were down 3-1 in the first round against the Pittsburgh Penguins, as most of you know by now. Came back and won it in Game 7 in overtime. Highly impressive. You never know what can happen with momentum like that. Coming back from down 3-1, having the best goaltender in the NHL this season, getting hot at the right time, having your star players take off. I think the Carolina Hurricanes are the better team and will probably win the series, but the New York Rangers are not going to make the season, and they might be one of the more entertaining teams left in the tournament to watch overall. The Battle of Florida, I think, is going to be highly impressive. You know the Florida Panthers have been waiting for another opportunity to face the Tampa Bay Lightning, and that series, I think, is going to be incredible. When Tampa Bay turns it on, there is no doubt they are the best team in the NHL. That's why they are back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, looking to go for a third, and they were highly impressive against the Toronto Maple Leafs. They were able to come back from down 3-2, tie that series up, and then win in Game 7 in Toronto, which I would say is a very tough thing to do, but that's just something that everybody does these last few years. In the Western Conference, Colorado and St. Louis, rest versus rust. Colorado's been sitting at home after sweeping Nashville for so long. Who knows what they're going to get? St. Louis last year, of course, had their way with Colorado, so there's a little bit of heat between these two teams. They're also division rivals, and they're ready to get after each other. Looking forward to sitting down and watching that best of 7, Calgary and Edmonton. Now, I think we all know that that is going to be the best series of the next round of the NHL playoffs. These two teams don't like each other, and it's obvious to understand why. So the Battle of Alberta is underway. Calgary versus Edmonton. I'm very much looking forward to enjoying that casually and covering it and sitting here and enjoying everything that's going to happen with that particular series. So that gets you caught up on the NHL playoff bracket. Now, let's go on over and talk about the AHL playoffs. So we'll shift coverage a little bit right here, and we'll talk about the Milwaukee Admirals, which, of course, is the Nashville Predators' primary development team in the American Hockey League. They are in the Central Division Finals after defeating the Manitoba Moose in 5 games in their best-of-5 series in the previous round. Now, they will take on the Chicago Wolves, also in a best-of-5 series. Let me give you the schedule. Game 1 will take place this Saturday night in Chicago, and then Sunday afternoon also in Chicago. They won't play again in Game 3 till Wednesday night in Milwaukee for the first time. On the 27th, also in Milwaukee if necessary, and the 29th, they'll wrap up the series in Game 5 in Chicago again. That is if necessary. Taking a look around the rest of the AHL playoff bracket and talking about how we got here, the Chicago Wolves, well, they had a sweep of Rockford, but they wrapped up on the same exact day as the Admirals 5-game series did. So the Milwaukee Admirals win in 5 games over the Moose, while the Wolves win over the Ice Hogs in 3 games, setting up that series. Stockton and Colorado will face off in the bottom half of that bracket. Both of those teams swept their series in the previous round 3-0, so they are set to get things started. started. Taking a look over on the eastern side of things, Charlotte and Springfield will meet up in the next round of the playoffs in a best of 5, and we are still waiting the final matchup in this bracket in the lower right quadrant. We got Utica and Rochester, and we've got Syracuse and Laval each facing off in a Game 5. That is taking place this evening, so we will not know the full AHL playoff bracket until about midnight tonight. Wanted to go ahead and get this episode recorded and get this in and ready to go. So Syracuse, Laval on the ice right now. Utica, Rochester also on the ice right now. We have to talk about the Milwaukee Admirals and the Chicago Wolves a little bit more before we turn it over to Rachel K. Let me tell you about the stats leaders for both of these teams going into the next round of the playoffs. Tommy Novak led the Admirals in scoring with a goal and 5 assists for 6 points. Burke had 3 goals and 1 assist for 4 points. The 3 goals led the Admirals in goals. Schneider with 1 and 3 for 4. Davies with 4 assists. And Huntington 2 goals and 1 assist for 3 points. Now, Ingram, as you know, was at the NHL level with the Nashville Predators, and once they were swept by the Colorado Avalanche, returned to Milwaukee, started games 4 and 5, went 1-1, goals against average of 4, save percentage of .889. Devin Cooley started the first 3 games of the series, went 2-1, had a 2.70 goals against average and a .934 save percentage. Now, with back-to-backs less than 24 hours apart and John Hines not being the coach of the Milwaukee Admirals, you have to anticipate Cooley is going to get an opportunity against the Chicago Wolves. But with it only being a best of 5, you have got to be careful. That back-to-back is going to be pivotal. If the Milwaukee Admirals find themselves behind in the series, it is going to be very difficult to come back and win. This is a David versus Goliath style best of 5 series coming up. Milwaukee Admirals are going to have to do a lot of things right, and they are going to have to get incredibly strong goaltending from Connor Ingram and possibly from Devin Cooley. Now, taking a look over at the Chicago Wolves side of things, Drury's at 2-2 for 4 points. Noson's at 2-2 for 4 points. Kane has 4 points. Smith has 2 goals and an assist for 3 points. And Lyon and Net, the sweep in the first round, 4-0 total, a 1.34 goals against average, now a .939 save percentage, and he is just putting up incredible highlight reel save after save and stats and not having any trouble against Rockford, as you would have anticipated. Rockford would have at least been competitive. The Chicago Wolves just absolutely dominated them on the ice and controlled the ice. And for the Milwaukee Admirals, if they come in with the same effort that they did in games 3 and 4 when they had to go on the road, they are not going to do very good against this Chicago Wolves team. It is a series I'm very much looking forward to. These are 2 rivals that are most certainly going to get after each other. I expect it to be physical. I expect it to be fast. And if the Milwaukee Admirals are going to pull off a victory against this high-flying Chicago Wolves team, they are most definitely going to have to get some big-time performances from a lot of players on their roster. Let me tell you about an incredible partner of the show here, Strong Style Fitness. You can check out her work at strongstylefit.com or check out Strong Style Fitness on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. 150 workouts on demand for you and totally donation-based. That's right, Renegades of Puck, a personal trainer so confident in their work that they have made their entire catalog completely free for you. I have seen the results and I have experienced the results for myself, and I know that you will too. Jump in the trenches with Strong Style Fitness today, whether it's your first stretch and you're just getting off the couch or you're ready to throw iron like a pro. Tracy over at Strong Style Fitness can help you out today. Again, there's 150 different selections for you on demand. New workouts filming soon, so we look forward to you jumping in the trenches with Strong Style Fitness. Let's go over to ontheforecheck.com and check out the tape room. Rachel K is going to give us a couple of thoughts on what happened in the previous series between the Milwaukee Admirals and the Manitoba Moose, and also going to start previewing everything that's going to happen in the next round versus the Chicago Wolves. From ontheforecheck.com, it's Rachel K.
Hey, Captain. It's Rachel. I still sound awful. I have a scratchy voice, and you're just going to have to forgive me. I wanted to give you a quick preview of the Chicago Wolves. First, it's worth noting about the Admirals that Rocco Grimaldi's presence on Sunday was absolutely vital to the success of the team. Go check out his Instagram and Twitter and find out about his medical journey over the last few weeks. Grimaldi didn't score on Sunday, but his presence is felt. I look forward to a big series from him against the Wolves. Coach Carl Taylor bragged on Sunday about Matt Tennyson after Sunday's victory, and he called him stable and an inspiration for the Admirals. We'll need guys like Matt to step up in this next series as well. Now remember, the Admirals played with the Wolves last season in the COVID-shortened 2020-2021 season. Guys like Phil Tomasino and Tommy Novak bolstered an already impressive Wolves team. This season, the Wolves absolutely tore it up. They had the best regular season record, and they boast some really impressive scorers like Andrew Podorowski, Jack Drury, and Stefan Nason. You can't underestimate Joey Keane either. Alex Lyon played 3 really steady games for the Wolves. He's not flashy, but he's exactly what that powerhouse squad needs. Defenseman Max Lajoie is a player to keep an eye on. He had a really, really good COVID season, Captain, and this season he's been an absolute beast. This is a guy who's going to get a call up to the NHL sooner than later. I'm also a big fan of Jamison Reese after watching him play all last season. He's an important factor to keep an eye on as well. For our Admirals, Connor Ingram will hold down the net. The muscle of Matthew Olivier and the assist machine of Tommy Novak will really set up the Admirals to give the Wolves a fight. Game 1 is Saturday. I know that's a bit off, but we can get excited and really get our hopes up for these Admirals in round 3. The Wolves aren't going to be that scary if they put all the pieces together and make things happen. Sink 'em, Admirals. Back to you, Cap.
From ontheforecheck.com, you can check out her work right there. You can watch her right here on Renegades of Puck TV. That was Rachel K. She's been breaking down the Milwaukee Admirals in the tape room for the Renegades of Puck, and I sure do appreciate it. No one is more authoritative in this market than Rachel when it comes to Milwaukee Admirals coverage, and I sure am proud to have her in the trenches with the Renegades of Puck. You know who else I'm proud to have in the trenches? The guy who steered us in this direction and stood up and got this all started. He said, you know what we should be doing now at the Nashville Predators out of the playoffs? He said, we should be covering the Milwaukee Admirals every day, just like we cover the Nashville Predators. Full game recaps. Everyone in the bunker working hard, and that's exactly what we have been doing. Kyle Perkins is an incredible asset here to the Renegades of Puck. You've seen his sick visuals plenty of times right here on the show, and you have also seen his memes all over the internet. He is the one and only Kyle Perkins, and he's got some talk about goaltending of the future with the Milwaukee Admirals and the Nashville Predators, and also what's going to happen between the Milwaukee Admirals and the Chicago Wolves.
Thanks, Charlie. As a lot of you probably already know, Yaroslav Askarov signed his entry-level contract with the Preds yesterday. This contract carries an annual average value of $1.775 million, $850,000 of which are performance bonuses. What this means is he's going to make around $925,000 if he was to play on the Predators all season. He would then have opportunities to make up to the $1.775 million mark if he completed certain objectives, which we don't know. Those aren't really given out to the public. However, he's most likely going to spend the majority of this contract in Milwaukee, where he's going to make $80,000 per year as per his minor league salary. This is a two-way contract, so he has 2 sets of salaries, one for the minor leagues and one for the NHL. Comparing this to another player that's played on the Preds this last year, that would be Philip Tomasino. His contract carries a $1.0005 million annual average value, $212,000 of which is performance bonuses. That's showing that they have some confidence in this player, but maybe not as big of a confidence of a difference maker. That's up for discussion. Tomasino's pretty good. If you look back at another Predators goaltender and when they came in the league and their entry-level contract, UC Saros, whenever he came into the league, his contract was $925,000 annual average value. This was also with no added performance bonuses. So, once again, Askarov's contract is pretty sizable for an entry-level deal. You want to compare him to a current, very popular, arguably my favorite Preds player this year, Tanner Jeannot. Tanner's on a one-way, so he only has one set of salaries. He's making the same amount of money whether he's in Nashville or Milwaukee. His 2-year contract has an annual average value of $800,000 with no performance bonuses. So Yaroslav will make more than Jeannot if he was to come up and spend an entire year on the Predators. That goes to show how much confidence this organization has in this young Russian goaltender. And I can't wait to see what he becomes, and hopefully maybe one day see him hoist some hardware.
That's Kyle Perkins right there. Sure to appreciate you, K-Perk, jumping in the trenches here on Renegades of Puck TV. Stripe Digital Solutions. You can find Stripe Digital Solutions online, stripedigitalsolutions.com, or easily social media. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You see the logo on the wall behind me, the t-shirt that I'm wearing right here in the bunker, renegadesofpuck.com, our social media, our brand building, and so many other things. All of that is done with the assistance of Stripe Digital Solutions. You need a partner in today's small business world. It is almost impossible to hit all of the different platforms and all of the different steps that you need to do in order to get your work out there and seen by the public. You need a partner like Stripe Digital Solutions. Get that conversation going with Brandy today and find out exactly how she can help your small business grow or even your large business. She's an otherworldly artist and an incredible digital master. I sure do appreciate Stripe Digital Solutions jumping in the trenches with the Renegades of Puck. Now listen, I want to take just a quick minute and tell you guys, now that we've pretty much effectively wrapped up Nashville Predators coverage, now that we've done our autopsy and our season recap, we are still going to be including the Nashville Predators as there is news breaking. Sean C. Smith is going to continue tracking everything going on in the world of the Nashville Predators, and when we have updates, we will bring those to you. Expected to hear from the head coach and the general manager later this week at their exit session for this upcoming season. So for the next week or so, we will cover the Milwaukee Admirals, game in, game out against the Chicago Wolves and everything going on in the AHL playoffs. We sure hope that you will join us right here in the bunker. We'll recap those games as soon as they are over. We'll do that live on Twitch. We'll get the full episodes of Renegades Puck TV up on YouTube. And then, of course, we'll get the podcast up everywhere they can be found. So we sure do appreciate everyone for jumping on board and supporting the Milwaukee Admirals as they make a run at a Calder Cup, winning a playoff series for the first time in 11 years and advancing to face off against a truly impressive juggernaut for the AHL in the Chicago Wolves with a lot of impressive prospects. We will be here to cover it, and we're very much looking forward to it. Aaron Sims, I'll be listening to each and every one of your broadcasts and watching you on AHL TV as I break down the game from right here in the bunker. So stick taps, love and respect to you, my friend. You're doing an incredible job of calling those games. I love the passion. I love the enthusiasm. You are the voice of Renegades. There is no doubting that. Now listen, before we head on out, a most serious subject. You may notice in the season recap I mentioned David Poile and said a couple of different times some qualifying statements like if he is still the general manager or will he still be there to sign this contract. Well, at this point in time, we have to have a very serious conversation. I left that topic out because, frankly, I wanted to close the show with that topic tonight. And I would like all of you, please, take a few minutes and listen to this. It is something that I have put together. It is something I put together with great seriousness. You do not come after a Hall of Fame general manager without having the evidence against him. So Renegades of Puck, I would appreciate if you would take a few minutes and listen to the case against David Poile.
He's been called a genius. He's been called a wizard. He's a Hall of Famer. And his general manager career started on August 30th of 1982 when David Poile was hired as the Washington Capitals general manager at the age of 33. He'd hold that position for 15 seasons. Very tumultuous time there for the Washington Capitals franchise. A record of .594, .454, and .124 for those of you who remember when the NHL had ties. No championships. At the end of 15 years, his contract was not renewed. In 1997, he's named general manager of the Nashville Predators, the first and only general manager in Nashville Predators history. Still the current sitting general manager right now. Generation 1 of the Nashville Predators, the first 5 years, he had no budget. Made shrewd moves. The Mike Dunham trade is one I'd like to highlight right there. Marek Zidlicki, Rem Murray, Thomas Kluchek, to clear out a starting goaltender that you needed to clear out to make room for Thomas Vokoun to take over as your starter. That's when this team started to take off for the first time. That trade was shrewd. And it was great. Rem Murray would pay off in the short term. Marek Zidlicki would pay off for several seasons. And Thomas Kluchek would totally flame out in Atlanta as a part of the Thrashers shortly after that. It's a shame. He was a big dude, man. I had hopes for him. Generation 2, Barry Trotz in the playoff years. We see moves like Steve Sullivan being brought in for 2 second-round picks. Immediate dividends. I'm taking some stupid 3-hour seminar at MTSU, Steve Sullivan's first night at Bridgestone Arena. I got the headphones on in the classic way. The hood up, I'm in the back of the room listening, and there's newly acquired Steve Sullivan just absolutely ripping the San Jose Sharks to pieces. I'll never forget that moment. Never. What a deal. The Dumont signing right before training camp, when Buffalo couldn't afford him, he goes on to become one of your best scorers while he's here. Now, it wasn't just great trades, and it wasn't perfect. The Brendan Witt trade was abysmal in this era. Giving up a first-round draft pick for a playoff run and a penalty machine in Brendan Witt, absolutely horrible deal. The Peter Forsberg trade brought in a name and nothing else. People were so excited about this moment. And then at Bridgestone Arena, we watched Peter Forsberg on 2 bad ankles at the very end of his career completely just fall apart on a shootout attempt. I know the Peter Forsberg thing was exciting, but it wasn't worth it. We end Generation 2 and go into Generation 3. Barry Trotz is now gone. Peter Laviolette is brought in. And the ERAT for Forsberg trade is made. Old players, previous generation players moved out. Draft picks, prospects, returned. The next era has begun. The next era for David Poile and Nashville Predators would lead to 2 division championships, 1 President's Trophy, and 1 appearance in the Stanley Cup Final. An individual award for General Manager of the Year. In 2018, we'd see David Poile pass Glenn Sather for the most wins as a general manager all time. Beloved, respected, often called a genius and a wizard for the signings, for the contracts, for the shrewdness of his moves. But what's happened to David Poile since the end of the Stanley Cup Final appearance in 2017 when the Predators lost in 6 games? Well, we heard from the team after that. Let's keep it together, everybody. Okay? We were all okay with that. We were all willing to give that team another shot, even though the previous year they had just barely squeaked into the playoffs and got hot at the right time and went on a run. Sometimes we forget that the season they made the run to a Stanley Cup Final appearance, they weren't that good for the majority of the season. They got hot at the right time. Let's not forget, they started every series on the road, and they were an 8 seed. But they got the job done, and they got through the Western Conference bracket, and they made it to the Stanley Cup Final. So I understood, let's keep it together. That team was a machine coming out the next season. Rolled right on through. It seemed like nobody could touch them. All the way through to a President's Trophy, number 1 seed in the NHL, home ice throughout. Winnipeg Jets were the stiffest competition that season for the Nashville Predators in division. Second round matchup. Game 7, the thing you fight for all season long, to have that Game 7 on your home ice. One of the most embarrassing nights in Nashville Predators franchise history. They fell to the Jets. They were eliminated. And we were all very alarmed by what we saw. Then we heard, let's keep it together again. There were no consequences after the first time of let's keep it together. So let's keep it together again. The players feel really good about the core. They really want to get this thing done. They would have another good season. They would win the division. But they would lose to Dallas in the first round and lose badly. The Dallas Stars would just drive them into the ice game after game. At this moment, we go into the next season. The team is not well. We have a Winter Classic to plan for. One of the big highlight moments in franchise history. Peter Laviolette gets the opportunity to take the team all the way through the Winter Classic, even though he should have been relieved of his duties several games earlier. The Winter Classic was described as a breaking point, but anyone who paid attention knew that the breaking point was much earlier than that. That team was completely broken at the Winter Classic. That footage in the locker room was heartbreaking. To see the players and the athletes that you cheer for and you love reduced to tears in the locker room because of what was going on. The Laviolette firing came too late. The Hines hiring was not the right choice. In a league that seems like the buddy system or a retread is the only way to go, if those were the only paths for David Poile, I would have preferred a retread, not name John Hines. I understand he had a good coaching career before the NHL. He did nothing in New Jersey. He did nothing to earn another spot. This team was broken when he took over. Broken players, broken system, broken everything. David Poile is the CEO of all of this. He's the general manager and the president of hockey operations. He has signed every contract, made every trade, drafted every draft pick. Everything that's ever happened with the roster of the Nashville Predators from day one to right now has been David Poile. Recent examples of what I would like to call general manager malpractice. And I'd like to enter these examples as evidence for what I will conclude with. The trade of Sam Girard and Kamenev for Kyle Turris when David Poile actually wanted Matt Duchene was a disaster. Sam Girard is going to turn out to be an incredible defenseman in the NHL. He was already showing signs that he could get it done here in Nashville, and you shipped him out for a player you didn't even want, and then you gave that player a long-term contract extension with a huge number that made him virtually unmovable. You would regret that trade, trust me. The extension of Austin Watson under the cover of darkness for 3 years and then suddenly trading him away. Austin Watson never should have been offered another contract. There's many reasons for that. Trading a first and a fourth to Chicago for Ryan Hartman and then completely misusing Ryan Hartman. A first and a fourth for a player that ended up contributing very little to this lineup. As a matter of fact, he would be traded with another draft pick for Wayne Simmons after David Poile had already acquired Brian Boyle for a second draft pick. The general manager couldn't see the redundancy in these two moves being made back to back. Getting rid of Hartman just to get rid of him. It was a bad deal. And I don't think anyone would disagree with that. Wayne Simmons had no business being here in Nashville, and he provided absolutely nothing. He wasn't worth the trade. Last year, letting Craig Smith walk and not trading him at the deadline. The Nashville Predators last season should have traded Craig Smith and should have traded Mikael Granlund before the trade deadline. Both of them were hot enough to bring back something from the cupboard. And if you wanted both of those players when they became free agents, like you did with Mikael Granlund, you could have made a run at them then. Failure to bring back something for players to go for a run that ended up being nothing. Lackluster drafts in recent years. Inability to develop prospects. Dan Bradley made the point last hour. Look at the DeBrincat versus Tolvanen discussion and argument. How are we seeing so few prospects make it to this Nashville Predators team and be successful? Massive contracts are what I hear about nonstop. For you, the fan, it seems to be what pisses you off more than anything. The big contracts to the core players. What it all equals up to is 5 years of declining results from the president of hockey operations and the general manager of the Nashville Predators. From a Stanley Cup final appearance to a second round exit to a first round exit to a play-in round exit to a no round this year. This team is in consistent decline. In this offseason, John Hines coming in for his first year, we were willing to give it a shot. We were willing to be patient. We were told a youth movement. And this next phrase I take, only to be dealt a sleight of hand. Alex Daughtry, thank you. I stole that from you on Twitter. Well, guess I borrowed it from you and gave you credit for it. The sleight of hand with the youth movement has frustrated me beyond anything. the players that were brought in this year as free agents are better options than the future prospects of this franchise, we just went through it. At the beginning of Generation 3, the players that were a part of this roster, even though they were beloved and had been here forever, were systematically moved on and draft picks and prospects were brought back for them. Yet somehow, after that abysmal flameout against the Arizona Coyotes in the bubble, the youth movement included signing a bunch of fringe free agents that have now come in and they're not delivering anything. This team is stuck in mediocrity and barely above last place. What does this entire discussion add up to? 39 total years as a general manager and no championships. The point of running professional sports and having a professional sports franchise is one goal and one goal only: to win a championship. Everything you do, every action you take, every move you make, every draft pick should be in that direction. And if you are not trying to win a championship, then you should not be running a professional sports team. This isn't high school sports. It's not college sports. It's not rec league hockey, where even though you know your buddy isn't that great, you keep him around just because. You like having him in the room. He's good on the bench. Whatever. 39 years as a general manager in the NHL without a championship. 2 division titles, 1 President's Trophy, 1 Stanley Cup final appearance as the Nashville Predators general manager in their entire history. There is not another team, another company, or anything else in this world that would allow declining results of this significance for 5 consecutive years, as well as not accomplishing the one goal that you have as the manager of this team. Without a cup, without a championship, what are some of the things David Poile is remembered for when I discuss him with hockey fans outside of Nashville? Scott Stevens always comes up. Didn't match St. Louis's offer. Got all those first-round draft picks. Oh, yeah. Halverson, Brendan Witt, Baumgartner, and Alomo. Those really worked out for you. I'll give you credit on Sergei Gonchar. You let Scott Stevens walk. You could have offered it. You let Suter walk. You took his word. You took a professional athlete's word that he was going to give you a fair shake. That in itself has made people angry for years. I wish Ryan Suter was still here. I wish Ryan Suter was an honest man and that he had signed the contract that he had talked about with David Poile. But he didn't. You traded Shea Weber. You traded Sam Girard. You traded Seth Jones. You traded PK Subban. But you signed Borowiecki. 39 years without a championship. This is now entering Generation 4 of the Nashville Predators in a season that is quickly bottoming out. As the host and captain of Predneck Nation Radio and the leader of the Renegades of Puck, it gives me great pain to tell you that I no longer have the confidence in General Manager David Poile to build the next generation of this franchise. I understand David Poile will never be fired. David Poile will be allowed to retire when he feels he's ready. But David Poile needs to recognize that there's a new generation of Predators that need the opportunity to play. This franchise needs to start to build towards the next generation. After all, at the end of the day, fan base, what do you love? The team, the crest on the front of the jersey, or certain managers, coaches, and names? What means the most to you? Having a competitive team? Having a fun place to go and watch a hockey game? Or after 2017, when you got that first taste, doing what you're supposed to do in professional sports and making a run at a Stanley Cup at every opportunity? No, every season will not produce a championship, but every season should be focused on the build. And if you have to bottom out and you have to lose for 2 seasons to rebuild the cupboard and get the prospects that you need, that's what you do. You don't hover in mediocrity. I wish David Poile would win a Stanley Cup as much as anyone. He's a Hall of Famer. He's the winningest GM in history. And he has given us players to cheer for and memories that will last a lifetime. I mean this with no disrespect. I spent a lot of time making sure that my words were true on this and that I had the right examples and that I chronicled it the proper way. Preds fans, I've laid the case out for you and I've given you my opinion. You're the jury. You're the ones who decide. You're the season ticket holders. You're the ones that buy the merch. You're the ones that support the team going forward. Whether this team's in first place, last place, I'll be here breaking it down and talking about it. The Renegades of Puck will always be here. We'll give our opinions, our analysis, our critiques. We have no power, but we can share our opinion, and we can lay this case out for you. As the leader of Predneck Nation and the Renegades of Puck, I no longer have confidence in David Poile as the general manager of the Nashville Predators. Only 2 other times have I taken the time to lay out the case like this on this show. The first time was for Barry Trotz. The second time was for Peter Laviolette. We've now had to have a very serious discussion about David Poile.